Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror in film, television, literature, and in popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the program. My name is Bruce Markison. As always, I'm joined by producer and co host Tracy Asteria. Tracy, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Bruce. I'm kind of like in the process of decorating for Christmas, and I cross my fingers that my tree will remain standing and that my new little cat, Pugsley Adams, will not be my nemesis and tear it down every night. So please think of me.
Definitely. I can sympathize. I think three times now our tree has fallen down, mostly because of my own incompetence. So it's always a concern. My wife Sue insists that we tie the tree up, which is a good idea. And most of the time it works, but sometimes I have it so crooked that even tying it up doesn't help.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. It's always a process. It really is. Well, Tracy, we're going to jump right into the program. Really excited about this week's guest. We're going to be talking to very accomplished actress Susan Lanier, who starred in the iconic 1977 film The Hills Have Eyes. Susan has been acting professionally now since the early 1970s, when she made appearances in really so many popular TV series, including Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter. She was in one of the pilots for Three's Company, also in Eight Is Enough. These were all shows I watched on a regular basis. In addition to The Hills Have Eyes, Susan's horror credits include a number of other films. They include the 2014 movie Cut, in which she played herself. Also 2019's Beneath the Black Veil, a film in 2023 called The Black Mass, and her newest in 2024, which is called Inverted. Susan, welcome to the Ghostly Gallery. Thank you for being with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And you left out my most recent one called The Boatyard. So
I played
The Boatyard, and I play Martha, the bartender. And I'm a pretty evil bartender. Let's put it that way.
We will ask about that a little bit later on in the show. Thanks for giving us that update. We do really appreciate you joining us. You've had a terrific career and certainly a huge part of one of the most iconic horror films of, I think, the modern era, within the last 50 years or so. Let's begin, Susan, by asking about your early days in Hollywood. What was it like for a young actress like yourself? You're trying to break in Hollywood in the early 1970s. What was that situation like for you?
Well, I arrived to Hollywood in the late 1974, early 75. I can't remember which one. So I don't know the early 70s because I was in New York, as well as I had done a couple of films in Texas where I was for a while. But mid 70s were fascinating in Hollywood. I got here and I had been doing a tour of a play with Pat Paulson, who was a series regular on Laugh-In, who was famous for sort of running for the president of the United States as a joke, but he was kind of serious. It would be appropriate today. Anyway, he might win. Anyway, he was a comedian, and I was on the road with him doing Last of the Red Hot Lovers. And he was signed by an agency, a big agent called agency ICM. And so the agent there saw me on the road and invited me to come to LA. And I guest starred on Happy Days the third or fourth day I was here. So I really didn't have to stomp around Hollywood and pay a lot of dues because I'd already paid dues in New York in the early 70s. So it was exciting. I did Happy Days. Actually, I was cast in that from a friend I went to high school with named William S. Bickley, Bill Bickley. And he was one of the writers and introduced me to Gary Marshall and all the Marshalls. And I went out that week. My first date was with Henry Winkler. So the Fonz, and I played a prom queen on that show. It wasn't a big part, but it was cute. And it kind of started the ball rolling.
Tell us about working with Henry Winkler, who played such an iconic character. Was that a little bit intimidating, given the success of that? I know the show was still relatively early at that point, but the Fonz, after that first season, really became kind of almost the leading character on the show. Was that a little bit intimidating for you to be
Not at all.
on a date with him?
Henry Winkler might be the nicest person in Hollywood. I just saw him recently, and it was like time stood still. We kissed and hugged and hello and how are you and all that kind of stuff. He is just flat out, maybe, probably the nicest person I ever worked with or I ever met in this business. So it was he was so down to earth, and the Fonz had taken off, but not hugely. I was on very early in the show, and so he took off really much bigger after we hung out, but he was always the same. I mean, he can't get any bigger than he is now, and he's the same as the humble, beautiful person I met the very first day I ever met him. Fame has never gotten to his head.
Oh my gosh. He just sounds like such a sweet person. I grew up watching like that show in reruns, and it was one of my favorites, that, and Eight is Enough. I remember watching those when I was a kid. So, that's kind of an interesting story to hear about Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, just looking back, is there a piece of advice that you were given early on in your career, something that you still carry with you today, that you just kind of like dig back when you're thinking about things? You're like, man, that was really great. That was really great advice.
Well, I received a lot of advice. I started in theater really early. And one of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got was that you don't break character and you don't stop the scene. Like if you mess up a line or something. So it's more like you just keep going and the director will call cut or whatever. Mm-hmm. I find that acting over the years, and now that I'm way a senior, the roles come and go. I did 2 films last year, which is not bad, not big budget films, but hey, I'm still here and I'm still working at the things I love to do. It's a very challenging career to pick, particularly for a woman. There are not as many roles for women. So you really have to have balls of steel to be able to survive it. I'm still in the middle of things and in the middle of, I got a new commercial agent, whatever, I'm still in the game and loving it. And the day that I quit loving it, I'll quit, because it never really gets that much easier. It's always just, you do the audition, you either get it or you don't, you do your job. It's a job is what it is. And I think that's the best advice, that just look at it as a job. It's a job.
Oh, that is really good advice. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, the atmosphere in Hollywood in the early 70s, the term that was often used, male chauvinist pigs. Was that particularly a problem at that time, dealing with male bosses, producers, directors, whatever titles they might have been? Was that something that made it especially difficult for you trying to establish yourself as a young actress?
Well, I don't think, because I was a leading ingenue, I don't think anybody who is a leading ingenue can escape that. It was everywhere on every set. So it was just something that you get used to. You learn how to handle it in a delicate way or not. And, I've lost roles for not playing that game. I've lost a music contract for not playing that game. And that's up to you. I never judged any of my friends if they decided to play that game, because a lot of them did and had to. to get the break that they needed. And anybody who thinks that that doesn't still exist today is crazy. It's the same. It's no different, except that I don't have to deal with it. Being a senior, you're not chased down like you are when you're, 20. So but for the young girls, I don't think much has changed.
Really? Let's talk about how The Hills Have Eyes came about. I believe you had known Wes Craven before. Is that correct? And did that lead directly to this part for you?
No, the casting director, Gus Shermer, had seen me on Welcome Back, Kotter. I think it was Welcome Back, Kotter. And had seen me also in Night of the Iguana, a play at the Amundsen Theater here in Los Angeles with Richard Chamberlain, and suggested me to Wes for the role. I had some recognition. I'd already been doing TV. I did Tony Orlando and Dawn and the Rainbow Hour, and I was doing stand-up comedy with George Carlin on that show. And so we were doing sketches every week. So I had some visibility when Wes called me in. I had some pretty good credits when Wes called me in for the meeting on The Hills Have Eyes. And so I didn't really audition. He knew my work. And we had a great meeting with Peter Locke, the producer, and they kind of offered it to me on the spot. So it was,
nice.
It was more like my agent didn't want me to do it and didn't want me to take the meeting and did not want me to do a horror movie. Because at that time, doing a horror movie was kind of the kiss of death. And I don't know whether that's true or not, or if things would have happened exactly the same way had I done it or not done it. But there was a stigma to doing horror, like that's kind of the bottom rung of the ladder. So I liked Wes so much, and I think he liked me too, enough that I truly wanted to do this movie. And I had television, enough of television, and I was antsy and wanted to go into doing real feature-length movies. And this was an opportunity for me. I saw it as starring Susan Lanier. I mean, that's pretty cool. And so I saw it as an opportunity. And I had no idea it would become a horror classic.
Wes Craven's reputation as a director has always been top shelf. I assume that was your similar experience with him?
Yes. Wes Craven was a darling man and a wonderful director to work with. He had his ideas, but he let you play with yours. He'd listen to us as actors. I had a few ideas that he liked and incorporated into the film. And the film was originally called Blood Relations. And I said, Wes, please change the name, please. I hate that name. Then it's really hard. It's really icky, and the cannibalism in it bothered me a little bit. And I thought, but it was more of a tease. Oh, Wes, come on, Blood Relations, really? But he listened and he changed it. I didn't think he would change it to The Hills Have Eyes. That was kind of a shock. But I guess he knew more about that than I did. So, he picked a good title, I think.
Yeah. So he listened to you. He took your on this.
Yeah, I ended up, they would invite me in to see the dailies, and I was the only one that when I was there, I was the only one. I don't know what they did with the other people, but when they were watching the dailies, they would invite me in. And my brother-in-law was a producer that Peter Locke was the producer, was also had, after I was cast, became friendly with. So it became a social thing too. Like Michael Berryman and I are very good friends. Dee Wallace and I are friends, friends with Janice Blythe and Marty. And so, we all became pretty friendly. So it was more like a family affair. It wasn't like Wes was the director and he was so down to earth and approachable. You could say anything to him.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Did he ever tell you about the real life incident that apparently inspired him to do this movie? Ever talk about that with you?
He might have. I don't remember that far back. If he did mention it, I did hear that it was made after a real life situation or experience. But I don't remember the tales of it if he did tell me.
Yeah. Well, I did a little bit of research on this just to prepare for the talk with you. It's interesting. Craven and his wife apparently were taking a motorcycle trip. They stopped in a small town in Nevada, and 3 local men, real troublemakers, apparently decided to pick on Wes and his wife. It actually resulted in them shooting an arrow over his head. They also insulted him. Craven didn't really back down. He threatened to sue them. And they replied in a very chilling fashion that they could easily kill him, leave his body in a nearby salt mine, and no one would ever know what happened to him. And when you hear that story and then you see what happens in the movie, you kind of see how the two go together.
Every writer, creator that I know creates, they create projects, including myself, over their own personal life experience. So you write what you know. And that's what every writer, and I am writing a project right now, I write what I know. And when I write music, I write what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing. And so I am not surprised at all that did not happen to him. And driving through the desert or these reclusive areas can be very frightening. I was on my way driving from LA to the set at The Hills Have Eyes. And it was to do pickups or something. And I was alone in a small Volkswagen. And some creep came up behind me in the desert. There were no cars around and tried to pull me over. I was only, I was in my 20s. And it was very scary. So, that he, and I'm sure, and luckily I'm pretty ballsy and I reared that engine on that little Volkswagen and honked and got away. But I could just as easily have not gotten away and nobody would have found me, Wow. So, these things happen. I was very lucky that I knew to avoid, my heart was pounding out of my body and I got to the set unscathed, but, only by the grace of God. I mean, that's when you start praying, oh God, get me out of here,
Oh, that would have been so scary.
Yeah. All by myself. And I was kind of cute back then. So it would have been, it would not have been a good ending, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The terrain in which you had to shoot this film, I just watched the movie again the other night. It looks so rough, uneven ground, large rocks, steep hills. Were the conditions as bad as we might think just from watching the movie all these years later?
Yes. I was bruised and burned. I came back from the desert. And the day that I got back from the desert, I had to screen test for Three's Company. And I was bruised I had bruises all over my body. And my agent, it was before cell phones. And I was in the grocery store. And my agent called and paged me over the pager of the grocery store. Susan Lanier, come to the office. And he said, you got to get over to ABC to test for a new pilot called Three's Company. And I went, I can't go. I'm a mess. I'm filthy. I just got out of the desert. I've got to pick up some groceries and I'm on my way home. I have bruises and dirt on me. And he goes, get over there. Now they're going to give you, they'll put you in the shower. They'll do your hair and your makeup and they have clothes and whatever. I dropped my groceries and ran over to ABC and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, it was very rough terrain.
Oh my gosh. I have to ask, what was it like to do something for Three's Company? That was like one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid.
Well, I lost there was another actress that was playing Chrissy, and
Mhm.
she had been in rehearsal for 3 days and it was not working out.
Oh, okay.
So they called my agent and asked me to come screen test that day I'm telling you about. And
Mhm.
that was for a screen test. Well, I'd
Oh,
already lost 3 or 4 days of rehearsal. Also, back then, they could not internet the tape through the internet. So they had to put my audition tape on a private jet airplane and fly it to New York for Freddie Silverman, who was the head of the network at the time, to
mm.
approve me. And so I lost 4 or 5 days of rehearsal. So I don't even remember that experience too much, except that I had a lot of lines to learn and a lot of
Right.
blocking to learn in a couple of days before we filmed in front of a live audience. So it was so rush. It's all kind of a blank. I would just stand
Mhm.
there and be dressed. They would just dress me, so or do my hair or whatever. So
Mhm.
it was a hard job because I had lost all that rehearsal time. John and
Right.
Joyce had already been in rehearsal, but I'm so thankful that I did it because I met at the time John was married to this fabulous friend of mine named Nancy Ritter, and we became friends on the
Mhm.
set. And I see her all the time. We hung out last week, and she's a dear friend of mine, and his children
Mhm.
I'm close to, and I might not have done the show, but I
Right.
ended up with lifetime friends on the show. So
Oh my goodness. And
John so much, but Nancy.
yes, and his and well, their child Jason,
Yeah.
he is wonderful. He's got such a great name for himself on some of his projects he's working on, and I follow his TikTok account, and he's always talking about Matlock and his new adoptive cat, and oh, he seems so wonderful.
And they are just great people. And I do music, and Nancy's
Mhm.
brother David is right now is the voice for Three Dog Night. But David Morgan, her name is Nancy Morgan Ritter. David
Mhm.
Morgan is one of the best songwriters on the planet in my mind, and also musician and an amazing voice. And so his wife, Alicia, same great songwriter, great musician. And we all play in the same band from time to time. And David was my late husband, Delaney Bramlett's, one of his dearest friends
Mhm.
and co-songwriter. So it ended up being so strange that I did not end up doing the show, but so ingrained in the family. So
Oh gosh. Oh, that sounds so wonderful. I'm curious, just for my curiosity, are you able to share a behind the scenes story for The Hills Have Eyes that maybe fans of that show would never even know about?
well, I I thought I would never talk about it, and I don't think anybody really does talk about it too much. But Virginia Vincent, who played my mother, they were on a very small budget, so they hired a special effects crew that were non-union. We were all in the union, and they put us when my mother's supposed to be shot in the stomach. They put a squib too high up, and when that squib went off, it blew off part of her, breast, and
Hmm.
of course that she had to go be rushed to the hospital, and
Mhm.
I believe that probably was her last day. I mean, it was not. It was. We had luckily shot a lot of the other stuff before.
Mhm.
Well, also one of the very first scenes that Wes decided to shoot, and I think it was the first scene, was the rape scene. So I didn't know Michael, and maybe our or the other guy and the other actor, and And Michael goes at me first, and then the other actor, and Lance, and was his name, and maybe Wes did that on purpose so that we wouldn't get to know each other, and it would be more frightening that I didn't know these people already, and maybe that was planned all along. So, but one of the things I did with Michael, as Michael was very nervous about that scene, and Wes told me that in advance. He said, now Michael is really nervous about this scene. Whatever you can do to make him, just relax into it and just commit to it. And I said, sure. And so unbeknownst to Wes, I said to Michael, because I think it was Wes himself or his AD, pulls the curtain back and there's Michael on top of me and I'm screaming, right? And so you can see the curtain come back. And I said to Michael, now when Wes calls action, let's make out like lovers and like it's not a rape. Let's be badly making out. And let's not tell anybody. And he started laughing because I Michael has some back then, he was not ordinary looking. He's got his issues. I think he was insecure about that. Right. Certainly Michael Berryman is not insecure about anything really, but for my sake, he was insecure about it, not for his own. Right. And I wanted him to feel comfortable that everything was groovy with me, right? So we're making out action, and we're making out madly, and everybody, even though we wasted a bit of film, everybody went into hysterics. Wes went into hysterics. It was a very funny moment, and it put everybody at ease, including Michael and myself. And then we were able to get really serious into the scene. So, I was very confident by then because I'd done a lot of, I'd done films in New York, and I had some wonderful parts on television. So by then I was really very confident.
Oh, nice. Oh, that was really good that you were able to kind of make everybody a little bit more comfortable, especially during shooting a scene of that nature. So that's actually pretty good to hear. Thank you.
Those are the inside. That's about all the inside scoop I can develop.
I was mentioning off air that I saw Michael Berryman at a recent convention in upstate New York at Vernon Downs, which is a racetrack not far from where I live in Cooperstown. And he, as always, was great with the fans and made a point of saying wonderful things about you. Obviously, you two have become longtime friends, and really you became fast friends on that set, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We weren't close on that set too much, except for the scenes we had together. Because if most of our scenes were not together. So they would shoot us at different times, of course. But Michael and I became really good friends on a red carpet years later when we reconnected, and we realized that we only lived blocks from each other in Calabasas, California. And so then we started hanging out all the time, and I'm wild about his wife. She's a doll, Patty. And so Michael and I kind of started being really close friends in the 90s or 2000s even. And so as neighbors, we started sharing Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that, and became really good friends. He's in my music video called Watch What You Ask For. You just might get it. And he wanted to be in the music video, and it's a comedy. I usually re-release it around Halloween. And that's nice. On YouTube. If anybody wants to look up that video, it's on YouTube called Watch What You Ask For. You just might get it under my music name, Susan Lanier Bramlett.
Okay, very good. It's amazing. People like Michael Berryman, people like yourself, Michael often plays villainous, horrible people, horrible villains, as he did in The Hills Have Eyes. And yet in real life, could not be any more different. It's remarkable. And I've noticed that going to so many horror conventions over the years, 98% of the people that you interview, that you interact with, just wonderful. And it's absolutely no reflection on the characters that they play. How about you and Dee Wallace? Did you become more immediate friends, or did that also come later?
Well, we keep running into after The Hills Have Eyes, we would run into each other at auditions, and her career took off like wildfire with ET. So Dee and I are neighbors. So I will run into her at Bristol Farm or one of the markets that we shop at, and we'll say hello. And I have gone to parties at her house, and we love each other. I mean, we occasionally we will do the conventions at the same time. The Hills Have Eyes conventions. I don't do the conventions like Michael and Dee do, because my focus also is on music. So, but yeah, we're friends.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview Dee at a different convention at the Turning Stone Casino in upstate New York, and she was great also. And right off the bat, she said, you can ask me about anything. You can ask me about E.T., Cujo. I'm willing to talk. Sometimes when you get, pretty famous actors, they don't want to hear the same questions, but she was willing to broach any subject. In terms of this film, you and the other actors, as you're making The Hills Have Eyes, did you start to think to yourself, man, this is a wild story. This could be incredibly controversial. Did you have time to think about that? Did that cross your mind at all?
It didn't, because I don't know that anybody actually knew. Though I saw the dailies and I could kind of picture the whole thing in my mind. The script was pretty close to what we did, but there was a lot of improv in it, a lot of changes that happened in the final product. So I don't know that there was any reason. It was just a job, and it was a fun job. So, I don't think I anticipated anything that I thought would be terribly offensive or strange.
Yeah.
I guess it was. Everybody says it was. And they say, oh my God, that movie changed my life. I was always scared to go in the desert or whatever. But honestly, when you're acting, you're just in the character in the moment. You're doing the scene that you're doing, and you don't really put the whole thing together in your mind. I don't. Maybe some people do.
Yeah. Jumping ahead many years, there was a remake done of The Hills Have Eyes, 2006, with Ted Levine and Aaron Stanford, among others. Curious if you've seen the film, any thoughts on it?
I was at the opening night red carpet, and Emily DeRaven and I got our pictures made by, all the press and everything, who played Brenda. Emily DeRaven played Brenda. I saw it. The only time I've seen it was opening night in Hollywood at the Dome Theater. And it was a fun night, and I thought they did an okay job. I prefer the rawness of Wes's version as opposed to the special effects of the remake.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are other people that probably like the other one. So I don't judge it one way or the other. I guess that's all about personal opinion. They seem somewhat familiar or similar, but not really.
Mm-hmm. I think you make a good point there, Susan. The rawness of the film that you did in 77, it's more frightening. It's more shocking. It has a little bit of a grainy quality when you see the print all these years later. And that really fits into what can be a hard to digest and a hard to fathom story at times. The 2006 version it's good, but it's maybe just a little bit too slick, too refined. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, that was my opinion. I thought it was too slick, but I think it all depends on the who's watching it, I suppose. It was cool.
Susan, I have a question for you. I was curious to ask you this. Just because you're such an icon in the horror genre, what do you think it is about horror movies that fans love and just keep coming back to it? Like, is there anything that you can think of that would help to kind of explain that?
I think horror movies are a great escapism, and I think with things that really are horrific situations in real life, and all we have to do is turn on the news to look at those. It's a way to escape the horrific things that happen in real life, like losing somebody or whatever your situation is. And it's just a great, fun kind of escapism for a lot of people. I think that's why a certain amount of the population love horror and a certain amount of the population hate horror. They don't want a reminder of horrific things that can happen. So, and if you look at it, and when I do them, I look at them as just exaggerated comedies. I'm a comedian first and foremost, and I think of them as kind of fun, and funny. I try to bring. I watched The Hills Have Eyes the other night at a party that was held at one of the cool recording studios here in town, and it was this whole group of Hills Have Eyes fans, and they invited me to be the guest, and it's just fun, and I forgot now in retrospect, I don't think the first audience that saw it would have laughed, but now it's camp. And so it's funny, and even I laughed at how camp it is.
Right.
So a lot of it, nobody really takes seriously, it's just camp. When Michael gets his ankle, eaten off by the dog, everybody's laughing rather than going, oh, they're laughing at that. And so, and some of it is very primitive in camp.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's funny how I guess horror movies evolve, because I know, like, I have older children and they will not watch horror films, but it's just interesting to watch something today that was released maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. And some of it is it's changed a little bit, but there's still some of those films that truly still terrify me and different scenes, but some of it you can go back and you can kind of laugh at it a little bit. So I totally get that.
I thought The Exorcist was very frightening, and go back and laugh at some of that too now.
Yes. Oh, exactly. And I just have another quick question, if you don't mind. You had mentioned that you had been to like a couple of conventions. Is there any interesting fan interactions that you can think of at the top of your head that really stick out for you?
Well, I did one here in Hollywood, Monsterpalooza in Burbank, and this fabulous creature walks up and he goes, "Oh my God, I'm meeting you! I can't believe I'm meeting you!" And he bought almost every picture on the table, and just stood there, and we chatted and laughed and whatever. And he had a whole group of people with him, and really cool people. And he said, "It's my birthday. Is there any way you would have dinner with me next door at the Marriott, which was attached to the venue. Would you join us for dinner? And I said, well, sure, I'll join you for dinner. I mean, after he bought that many pictures, I owed him. And so, and his name is Brian Danley. Mm-hmm. He wrote and directed the movie Saved with Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, wow.
And this was probably 8 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. And we're best friends. So it's like, oh my God, it just changed my life to meet him. He's so gifted and talented and such a dear friend, and lives here, and I see him frequently. And it's, you know, those are the things that change your life. You know, you never know. My motto is say yes, always say yes. You know, and then if you say yes, you know, if you say no, nothing's going to happen. If you say yes, something might happen or it might not.
That's actually really great advice. I love that. That's a good motto to live by.
Yeah. It's worked for me so far.
Yeah. Say yes, but have a good exit plan in case it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, right.
Another good piece of advice.
Susan, let's talk about these last 10 to 15 years, which have been really busy for you. I mean, you're not slowing down. You're quickening up, if anything. We mentioned some of the films that you've done in the 2010s and the 2020s. An interesting movie was 2014, a film called Cut, about two young filmmakers, would-be filmmakers, who get the idea of actually committing real-life horrors and putting them on film, thinking that it's going to be more authentic. It's interesting from your perspective because you appear in the film as yourself with Gabrielle Stone, the daughter of Dee Wallace and the late Christopher Stone. So tell us about how that part came about for you.
Well, David Roundtree directed it and wrote it with David Banks. And they are both represented by my manager. And she said, you know, I have Susan Lanier, and if you want to write something, and she also had Gabrielle Stone. And so we put all that they thought it would be a great idea to have me in it as a film director. And it was quite a hoot to be working with Dee's daughter. I know I'm still friends with too. And so that's how that came about. And I think that is a really well-made movie that should have had a bigger response, maybe. I thought it had potential to sort of become a Hills Have Eyes kind of fan base. It didn't, though. So yeah, but it was I thought it was very well made.
And the ending was a complete surprise. I didn't see any of that coming. I mean, that was really well done. A couple of things. Gabrielle Stone, first of all, I'm amazed how much she looks like a young Dee Wallace. But you two really seem to have tremendous chemistry. It seemed like you're really good friends in real life.
We were then. I mean, her life has moved on. You know, people go their own ways. She's gotten married again, I think, since then. And so I haven't been in touch with her lately. We like each other's stuff on Facebook when we do. But I haven't seen her in a while. But she was a doll to work with. We had an incredible rapport on set.
Did you know her father, Christopher, at all? Did you ever talk to him?
No, I never met him.
Yeah. Sadly, he died very unexpectedly and really at a young age. And it was obvious from talking to Dee Wallace a few years ago how strong their marriage and their relationship was. Some other movies that you have made in recent years, I have to confess I haven't seen a couple of these, but you did make Beneath the Black Veil in 2019. Also, The Black Mass in 2023. Tell us about those two.
Well, Beneath the Black Veil, I just play a PR agent, and I don't have to be evil. Well, I'm kind of mean, but you know, it's not that horror. It's more of a thriller. And I don't think it gathered too much steam either. The Black Mass is more recent. It's won quite a few awards. And Devaney Pinn directed it. And there's a whole group of us. Brooke Lewis Bellis is a dear friend of mine, and she is sort of the ringleader of this whole group of horror women. And she's in my music video as well. She's a wonderful producer and fabulous actress. And she introduced me to Devaney, and Devaney was trying to get some names into the Black Mass. So Eileen Dietz is in it, and a couple of other people. And I just play this straight German woman, which was great because I got to act and just play a straight on character, which I enjoyed doing. The following film last year was The Boatyard, where I'm much more horror and mean and evil in it, and kill people and things like that. So that one was a lot more fun to make because it's a bigger part for one thing, and also pretty evil. So, it's fun once in a while to do that.
Yeah. Somehow I missed that in doing some preparation for this, The Boatyard. Hopefully I can find that on streaming.
Well, it has not. I think it's still in post. I don't think it's been released yet. So that might
really
be.
Okay. And then the one other film that you have listed for this year is Inverted. Is that out?
I think it's released. It was pretty low budget. I shot that in Kentucky. And I play Alma Fiennes, a kind of female Charles Manson cult leader. And it's also very, very camp. Very camp. So you have to really watch that when Maria Olsen is in it, and you have to really watch that one with a sense of humor.
I saw the trailer for that last night, and it looks pretty interesting. I'm really curious to take a watch at it. It did remind me of like a Charles Manson type storyline. So
And I'm the female Charles Manson.
One of the things I find fascinating about your career is that not only, have you been acting for so many years, but you have all these other talents. You've made reference to your musical career. You did some singing in the movie Cut. Also, you are quite a photographer from what I hear. Tell us a little bit about that aspect of your talent.
Well, like everybody, you will have a slump in the career, and I needed to recreate myself and know lighting pretty well. And I had a dream one night that I was a photographer, and the next day I got a camera and started shooting friends. And before you know it, I was a pretty big headshot photographer in LA, and perfect job, because if I got an audition or wanted to go do a play or a project, I just don't work. And in the meantime, always have a job, and won a bunch of awards with photography. I've shot Mark Cuban, Willie Nelson, Robert Duvall. I've shot a lot of big, fabulous people. And I love being on the other side of the camera. And it's very helpful today with all the technology that is going down for an actor now. We don't go in the room and audition anymore. It's all via self-tape and your lighting and video equipment at home, and then you send it in. And so it's a godsend that I had to reinvent myself for the slump, because I'm pretty good with the technology, and a lot of people that are in my category or my age group or whatever, they had to just quit because there's no way they're going to learn all that stuff. But I didn't. That didn't happen to me because I already knew it. So it continually changes, but I'm able to keep up with that so far. So that's pretty cool.
Very good. Final question, Susan, before we let you go. You're obviously very busy. It seems like you're busier now than maybe you've been in a few decades. Things are constantly going for you. What's your next project? Do you have something lined up right away?
Yeah. A couple of days ago, was it yesterday or the day before? I'm losing track. I started shooting on my music video that's coming out for Christmas. Last year, I released a Christmas single called Merry Christmas on My Own. And it got a little bit of airplay, but I had some health issues. And so I had a knee replacement, and I wasn't able to really promote it the way I wanted. And I had no video to go with it. And music does better if you have visuals to go with it. And so I'm going to be shooting tonight more footage after we stop. And so I'm releasing that song again for Christmas called Merry Christmas on My Own. I hope you'll either download it or go get it or whatever. It's a kind of a sad Christmas song, but I figured it could end up in some Hallmark movie somewhere or something. And I'm writing music, recording all the time.
So
Very good. I promise to get that song, by the way.
Thank you.
So is the best place to find your music? Would you recommend our listeners visit like Spotify, or is there a different site where you should find your music?
On Spotify, iTunes, all of the Napster. I don't know. I don't know them all, but I think the distributor got it out to all the different platforms. So, and then of course the music video I'll probably release on YouTube, but anyway, so, and I have a couple of other music videos on YouTube, not a lot. But I'm going to get busy doing that pretty quickly, but this Christmas song will be done quickly, maybe next week.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Our guest has been the longtime actress, very accomplished Susan Lanier, who guest starred in many TV shows back in the 70s, like Happy Days, Welcome Back, Kotter, 8 is Enough, and of course played the lead role in a horror film from 1977, The Hills Have Eyes. Susan, we really appreciate it. Very much enjoyed the conversation over the last hour. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you.
That's always good to hear. Thanks. Susan Lanier has been our guest. My thanks to Tracy Asteria, who does all the technical work as well as asks good questions as well and helps me out as the co-host here on the Ghostly Gallery. We thank all of you for joining us right here in this Museum of the Macabre, and we hope we'll see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.